to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Greg Southwick, the Director of Athletics at Cottonwood High School. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to school, university, your first job, etc.
Well, I grew up in Richfield, Utah. My parents were both educators, and my dad was a high school basketball coach for 20-something years. So ever since I was little, we was kind of a gym rat and spent time in the gym with him. And then we ran about 160 head of cattle on the side. So we kind of had a cattle ranch as well. And so growing up in Richfield, that was my life. Basically, high school athletics and chasing cows all over the mountain.
So
and
when did you graduate from Richfield? What year?
I graduated in 1984.
Okay, so was that, I'm trying to put was the younger Cuff still there, or was he graduated by then?
No, Rob Cuff is a couple of years younger than I am.
Okay.
And my dad and Bob coached there for almost 20 years together.
Perfect.
So, and I talked to Rob a while back, and we come to realize that Richfield's won 5 state championships in basketball, and the names Southwick and Cuff are on all 5 of them.
That's awesome.
So that's
awesome.
That's kind of between with me and him. That's kind of a cool bragging thing to acknowledge that either as us as players or our fathers coaching. And
well, that's great. Continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue on about your background.
So that's where I spent the time growing up in Richfield. And then from there, I served an LDS mission right out of high school. And then once I returned, I was entertaining the idea of playing basketball at Snow College. And then I ended up getting a scholarship at Utah Valley, where I attended school there for a year and then transferred to BYU on a full ride scholarship there. So while I was at BYU, my major ended up being exercise science, sports medicine, and I went into athletic training, and I was there from 88 to 92, working as an athletic trainer.
Perfect.
So from there, I left there in 92 and went to Mountain Crest High School, where I started as a head athletic trainer and an assistant basketball and track coach.
And how many years were you there?
I was there for 2 years at Mountain Crest. And then I go ahead.
No, then you went to.
Then I accepted the head basketball job at a small school in central Utah called Wayne High School. And
Bicknell.
I was in Bicknell, Utah, and I was actually there for 18 years as a coach for track, cross country, and basketball. And then in 2007, I got my administrative endorsement and kind of moved into administration.
And that's when you moved to Cottonwood?
I was assistant principal there for a bit, and then I was a principal. And then in 2015, I came to Cottonwood as an athletic director up here, kind of to conclude my career. So I've been here about 10 years.
Perfect. Well, talk to me about the opportunity you had to play youth sports in Richfield. It's a bigger small town, so I know you may not have had as many opportunities as maybe the kids that are currently at Cottonwood, but certainly you would have had more opportunity than the kids that you coached in Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, we're going back a long time, Mark, and it was, back then, team camps were just starting in team sports like basketball and football. Most of our youth athletics in that were in the form of what they call band and basketball or junior jazz. So, our youth experiences growing up before we hit competitive athletics in high school and junior high was those like Bantam and that was run by Richfield City.
Okay.
And so your programs that you have now with AAU and that they just didn't exist back then. So
Sure.
um, and I'm sure they didn't. Maybe they did up in the city and that, but in central and those smaller areas, that was your basic your athletic experience growing up was city provided programs.
Sure. Let's have you talk for a minute, Greg, about some of the mentors and leaders you had in your life early on and then later on that had a big impact on you.
Well, I'd say probably my father was the greatest mentor I had. His advice to me growing up was do not choose this profession. You never get rich and people are always getting mad at you for this and that. And I followed his teaching to exactly not do what he did. I ended up doing step by step, following his footsteps. And, as we look back, I think he's grateful for that, despite his advice not to pursue the profession. But growing up with him as a coach and seeing the way he worked with young people and how much they appreciate him, and especially as they got older and they came back and talked to him and expressed their admiration and great gratitude for what he did, that was something that really drove me. I wanted to be able to do that to young people's lives. So I would say he's probably my greatest mentor, seeing the effect he had on young people. But then as I got into the profession a little more, I had the opportunity to work with several basketball coaches, Liddell Anderson at BYU, and then Roger Reed. And then probably one of the greatest influences I had was Lavelle Edwards. As a trainer there, Lavelle used to come and pick us up in a golf cart and take us and get us drinks and talk to us a lot about life stuff. And, some of the things that he taught us, not even being a football player there, but just working with the athletes and that, had a huge impact on my decision to pursue athletics. And that's one of the reasons I left the college is to engage with young adults in the form of athletics. And I think everybody knows this from a coaching standpoint, you build a relationship with kids as a coach that you never can have as a teacher. You're more involved in their lives. You have a greater influence over them. So, education was definitely a part of it, but coaching was probably one of the major driving forces to get me into athletics at the high school level was to have that same impact that some of these people had on my life that are in the profession of athletics.
Perfect. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Greg. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Well, that's a hard question, but I think, as a coach, when I started out my career early, a lot of times I would try to play the role of maybe trying to save kids that were making bad decisions in life and thinking that maybe they needed the sport like basketball, for example, more than basketball actually needed them. And there was situations that I learned quickly that can't necessarily be the case as much as you would desire it to be. And one of the biggest things I did is I kept a couple of kids that were just struggling in life that it ended up coming back and bite me in the butt because parents got mad and everything because their kids weren't playing and the whole purpose of keeping them was to keep them engaged in that and maybe influence their life a little bit to make good decisions, and it ended up backfiring and causing a lot of issues with the parents and that because of the way they felt with the kid not, more playing a role and being a big impact player. And so that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made, which I changed throughout my career, is instead of being trying to save kids through your athletics, it's more kids that want to play and then trying to give them life skills because of their desire to play and wanting to commit to whatever the program offers.
Great insight. Thanks for sharing that. Let me ask you, how has the job of AD changed since you first got it 10 years ago at Cottonwood? And how has it changed since you were the assistant principal and principal way back when you were at Wayne High School?
Well, and as well as I do, because you've been through the whole realm of things, education, athletics has changed a whole lot in the last 30 years. Things, old school type coaching and that is hard to do nowadays because we're dealing with a different generation and they require a little different approach. But they are dealing with things now, we as administrators and coaches, that I never even thought I would ever have to deal with as either as a coach or an administrator. A lot of the changes that have become difficult is the kids seem a lot more sensitive, uh, more entitled. And then you have Title IX issues that have come about that, back when you started in the early 90s, they were there, but they weren't as prominent. Then you have gender issues that you have to deal with in the athletic and the administrative side of competition. So there's a lot of these things that have developed over the years that at one point in my career, I never thought as a coach or administrator, you'd ever have to deal with situations like this and administrate over them. And there was a learning curve as we went through this as a society and as an athletic family.
Sure. Let me ask you for a minute, your journey with the UIAAA, when you became the AD, obviously you had heard about it well, tell us how you heard about it and talk about the times you've had at the conference and the importance of attending that conference to our listeners.
Well, I'll be honest, having been an assistant principal, having been a principal, this position right now that I hold is probably the best position I've ever had in education. Coaching and that was great, but I'm around athletics every single day. You deal with the problems, not so much the athletes, but more parent and administrative problems. But the one that probably directed me the most in this that I probably had as a mentor or tutor would have probably been Rich Barton. Rich was the AD in Richfield, where I'm from. My wife's an administrative assistant at Richfield that worked directly with Rich. And so as I transitioned from principalship into AD, and he's the one that kind of got me in line with UIAAA and kind of showed me the ropes of the AD aspect of education. I found that having been a principal and then being an athletic director probably made the job a little easier because you deal a lot with the same situations. You have a good understanding of school law. And then UIAAA has come out with the educational program of becoming an athletic administrator, which goes over a lot of these laws and stuff specifically to athletics. And so that's kind of how I got into it. But I think it's an organization that is essential, especially in today's athletics, to be successful and to be, within the law of making decisions and protecting kids and protecting the athletic aspect of education. So I'm really a proponent of the UIAAA, the UHSAA, and their desire to make athletics fair and to make it meaningful like it needs to be, especially at the high school level.
Great. Thanks for sharing that insight. Let's have you talk for a minute about Cottonwood, what it's like to be the AD there. I know they have some great tradition. I know their baseball team has always been good. I know some programs get better and then they get worse, but it's, Cottonwood's kind of in the middle of the valley. It's in Murray, but it's in Granite District. And so talk about some of the issues that happen there at Cottonwood.
Well, Cottonwood has been successful, especially early in the years of Cottonwood when it was established and up through the mid 2000s. But I think once the Granite High School was tore down, now remember, I'm Richfield, so I didn't get the whole history
Right.
of being up here, but I'm seeing the effects of it. I think when Granite High School tore down and they changed some of the boundaries, even though Cottonwood's an East Side school, our demographics is really basically obscure to the other East Side schools. We take in, I
Yeah.
think, like 50 something, maybe even 48 free and reduced lunch %. And so, we don't typically have what you'd see in an East Side school. We deal a lot with the refugee kids and those group of kids that came from the South Salt Lake area that would have once been at Granite High School. And as a result, different athletic programs have benefited and others have been hurt by it. We have soccer, we have 80 something kids try out because that's kind of where these kids, that was the
Hmm.
sports they were around. So that's big, but overall, Cottonwood's doing pretty good. Our boys and girls basketball programs have won region 3 consecutive years and made it to the state tournament. Baseball, like you said, has always been traditionally good. And what I'm finding out in this high school in particular is with our demographics, we have to have coaches in place that kids in this valley want to come and play for.
Sure.
And with the new rules of UHSA, when they're eighth graders and that, and they're shopping around for schools to participate in, if you have those type of coaches in place, you're going to draw some athletes in to maybe compensate for maybe some of your demographic makeup in the school itself. So our programs are successful and are becoming more successful because I think some of the coaches we've hired and put in place.
Excellent. What's the favorite part of your job, Greg?
Um, well, for the 33 years I've been in this profession, it's always been working with kids. Watching kids grow, mature, and develop, and watch how the coaches have taken these kids and taught them life skills. So, for my entire career, and I don't think anybody can be in this career and finish the career if they don't have that passion to work with our youth and be a mentor to them and build those relationships with young men and young women that we get as coaches, and then as ADs, you get to mingle with all programs and be involved with kids from all sports. And so I think that's the highlight benefit of
Perfect.
this.
Let me ask you a couple of personal questions I don't normally get to some of my guests. The first would be, and I had no idea that you would spend all that time in Bicknell. So you're close to Capitol Reef. Were you able to just, take an hour or two and just visit the park quite a bit while you were down there?
Um, yeah, Capitol Reef was right there, and we spent time taking kids down there. And yeah, and a lot of hunting that we do is right along the edge of Capitol Reef. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean it's a nice park, and it's got some great scenery, and family nights, whatever we did, we spent some time down in the park just enjoying each other and going on short hikes and uh, picnicking and stuff like that in Cap because it was only 15 minutes from where we lived.
Sure, exactly. And so talk about if you were in Wayne for what, almost
18
20
years.
years,
Yep.
18 years. So you went there and well, talk about how the makeup of Torrey and Capitol Reef has changed just since the late 90s. And now I mean, it's still hard to get as a national park off the beaten path for those people out of state. But the tourism there has picked up incredibly over the last 30 years. Speak to that for a minute.
It has, and like everywhere else, it's growing a little bit, but the economic base for Wayne County is primary tourism. Um, and as a result of that being a major economic base, that determines the salary schedules and stuff like that. And so
Hmm.
uh, the summers are super busy. That's when you have an influx of people coming in to go see the park and to view the Boulder Mountain and the Henry Mountains. And
Hmm.
Highway 12 is one of the top three scenic highways in America that goes around that east end of Boulder and Hell's Backbone in that area. So, yeah, the summer times are extremely busy for the kids who work in these resort areas and the fast food restaurants. And so, it's a happening place during the summer, and then during the winter, it's just like quiet and almost dead-like. But that's from an athletic standpoint, everybody in town goes to high school athletic events because that's what they do
Right.
all. So. Um, what's ironic, Hutch, with this is when I came here from there, I was amazed that we had more people attending ball games in these smaller schools than we did in this larger classification because
Right.
there's a lot going on here, but in those small schools, that's what they live for.
It's the
High
only
school
game in
athletics.
town, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, talk to me about I'm hoping that this is the correct question. You had to have been to Calf Creek Falls
Hmm.
at least multiple times, and just talk about the beauty of that and the remoteness of that to our listeners that haven't had a chance to be there.
Well, if you ever have the opportunity, it's a really short hike, uh, and it's flat, but
Yeah.
it's a fall that comes off, and then the water's clear, it's warm. There's a big pool at the bottom that the kids will swim in, but I mean it's secluded, it's isolated, and it's just like I said, it's an easy hike. Kids that are 4 and 5 year old can walk into that. Falls fairly easy, and if you haven't seen it, people need to go see it. It's probably one of the most photogenic places in the park and on that area where people like to go in and take pictures standing under the falls or near the falls. So, and I'm not sure what the height of the falls is, but I know it's 80 feet, maybe plus a little bit.
I think it's I think it's just over 2.5 one way, so maybe 5.5 round trip. But like you say, it's flat.
Yeah.
The trail's dusty, sandy. It's not a tough hike at all. So
Oh.
thanks for sharing that insight. Let me ask you one more quick personal question about a young lady that you and I have something in common with. My granddaughter, who has harassed you probably for the past 1.5 to 2 years as she's visited your school. What's that been like? I made that connection here, obviously, months and months ago, but talk about having someone who's at a lot of your ball games that's not one of your students.
Well, I'm going to claim her because,
Okay.
yeah, she's a little fireball, and we've loved having her here. And she never walks into the building and that without finding me and give me a hug. But she is a Spitfire, and knowing her grandpa and her father, I can see exactly where she gets it from. But the other thing is, she's a hell of a lot cuter than you two.
Well, there's no question. I'm going to make sure Addie listens to this, so this will make a smile on her face. Let's finish with a couple of questions, Greg. The first being, you've got two suggestions for a brand new AD, and they need to follow Greg's suggestions in order to become a successful athletic administrator. What would your two suggestions be?
I think to become a successful AD, you're going to have to put the time in. You got a lot of sports, a lot of activities going on. It's a time commitment that you have to commit to be good and to be successful. You oversee a lot of things, not only fans and that, but officials, and so I think number one is time commitment, and I think number two is you just got to have a love and passion for kids and athletics. If you love being around athletics and you like working with kids and seeing them grow and succeed, and you have those two things, the time and that, you would be a great AD. But
Perfect.
building relationships with his kids in any profession in this business is the number one and probably one of the most important things is building those relationships with your athletes.
Perfect. We'll finish with this question. Greg, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
What are you going to do when you retire?
Well, I will ask you that, but I know what the answer is. It probably has to do with 18 holes. But what are you going to do when you retire here in a couple of weeks?
Well, you got it right. I'm going to play a lot of golf, and I do have 60 head of cows, beef cows. So I'm going to do what little farming I have to do to get the cows their hay for the winter, but run my cows and golf. And then I'm sure the wife's got lots of projects.
Where do you keep the cows?
We got a couple hundred acres pasture, and then we've got about 60 or so acres of farm ground. And all
Yeah.
the cows we summer down. I don't know if anybody goes to Richfield. There's some ground behind Richfield, behind the Walmart, and
Uh-huh.
there's 100 acres there that we basically summer the cows in, and it's all pasture.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Greg Southwick, the Director of Athletics at Cottonwood High School. Greg, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.